My camera's on the fritz in the studio. I think it'll be okay. But so I have to make this video here in my lounge with my phone camera. Good news. Years ago, all right, it has been corroborated. Another 6.5 by 14, early 70s Ludwig SUPRAPHONIC, chrome over brass with a B stamped on it has been found. Years and years ago, 10 years ago, Peisty Bob, my main man Bob Marzalak, called me one day. He's like, Terry, oh look, I got some new giant beats if you want to check them out, and I also got a SUPRAPHONIC I want you to check out, an early 70s Blue Out Badge SUPRAPHONIC, chrome over brass. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, if anybody remembers, even now it still happens. You'll see people put on eBay or Reverb, chrome over brass Supra. Part of the reason is they think everything is chrome over brass, or they want to think theirs is because it's more money or whatever. And sometimes there's shysters. So Bob's like, well, I just traded for the 6.5 by 14 brass SUPRAPHONIC. I think it was a 26 by 14 Ludwig 3-ply bass drum. This was right before the Ludwig, or like right when the 26-inch 3-ply Ludwig bass drum started getting bid through the roof about 10 years ago on eBay, if anyone recalls. So I'm like, sure, Bob, come on over. We got the giant beats and some 602s and stuff. And he hands me this 6.5 by 14 Supra. Now, bear in mind, everybody and their brother knows, even a casual Ludwig vintage collector knows about the 5 by 14 chrome over brass early 70s, B stamped above the tone control SUPRAPHONICs, right? I mean, it's common knowledge. I mean, I knew about them back in the mid-90s. I mean, people knew about them. You'd find them. And it's always funny when people use that 200 number. Yeah, there were 200 made. And I know from my own experience over the past 30 years, I've seen 20 of them in person here in the Chicago area, right? Anyway, my point is, Bob has the drum. Sorry, I don't want to get sidetracked because it's exciting. And I've mentioned this in other videos over the years. I have other videos on chrome over brass SUPRAPHONICs and stuff. How to spot a chrome over brass SUPRAPHONIC and Super Ludwig. Anyway, so Bob, I look at the drum and I'm thinking to myself like, oh God, Bob got ripped off. Somebody, knowingly or unknowingly ripped him off. Really nicely plated 1970, 71 Supra. And sure enough, I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's sure, brass plates differently than aluminum does. Aluminum's a very reactive metal. Unless you, if I understand this right, the dude signals at Griffin Plating told me this, which is another story that I've told before, told me that unless you plate aluminum with zinc first, and then put the copper plate, the nickel, and then the chrome, if you don't put the zinc first, it's going to peel and pit horribly. Because copper and aluminum are like this. Aluminum's a very reactive metal, they said. Anyway, long story short, drum comes, it's plated incredibly, and Bob shows me underneath the P85 is a point where it looks like somebody took a drill, didn't drill through the shell, but like pressed it up against the shell and pulled off, so it scraped off a perfect circle of chrome and nickel and copper plate where you could see the yellow of this delicious brass shell. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, God, there's other features on the drum that make it look brass. Remember, brass is softer. Now, aluminum can be soft. People are used to like an aluminum can being real soft. But aluminum typically, it's soft, but not soft like brass can. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's harder brass alloys. But typically brass is softer than aluminum. At least if you're talking about a brass Ludwig spun shell and aluminum spun shell, the brass is softer. It's weaker, okay? So I'm looking at the drum, well, there's no B above the knob, and there's, I'm looking all over. Finally, I find a B stamped into the shell. The same B you'll see on the 5x14s above the round knob, but behind the butt plate. Behind the butt plate. So and it was hard to see. It was like perfectly situated where you kind of really couldn't see it from the top or the bottom. I didn't even get a flashlight, I think. So Bob's 6.5x14 Supra, B stamped on the butt plate. First, I'd ever heard of a 6. Now, I'd heard of people talk about 6.5x14 brass shelled Supras, from the 70s. Remember, we're holding like the late 90s and 2000s and teens out of this, okay? Because Ludwig started reissuing all this stuff in the past 15 years. I mean, now it's very common to see a clip badge 5x14, even probably 6.5x14, You know, it's like in honor of the original clip badge ones. Those are out of the purview. We're talking about 1980 and before here, okay? So I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And again, I've mentioned this in other videos, kind of by the by. But now I'm going to make it official. And part of the reason why I didn't want to mention it, I mean, I wanted at one point to make a video specifically on the 6.5x14 chrome or brass B-stab drum. But the fact of the matter is that's the only one I'd ever seen or even heard about. You know what I mean? And so Bob still has his. I want to get it in a video. But so what happened is, you know, I wanted to corroborate it. You know what I mean? I have a drum here that I still want to corroborate with another one if I see one. I'll get on that later. But so what happened was, all right, so we corroborated, and the following happened. Last week on eBay, I was on there looking for something. I typed Ludwig in the search engine. Sure enough, one of the first few things that just popped on is a 6.5x14 SUPRAPHONIC. Early 70s, you know, pointy badge. It has the spacer. That's one thing a lot of people don't understand too. If you see a SUPRAPHONIC or an acrolite or a super sensitive, where Ludwig in those days used to use the same grommet on the wood shell drums as they did the metal shell drums. But because the metal shell drums were so much thinner, they used to use a spacer. It looked like almost like a ring, like this, okay? Except really probably what it was a piece of electrical piping, 1/2 inch, that they would cut maybe about 1/4 inch or 1/5 of an inch. They put on the inside of the shell, they take the grommet, and that extra space, it meant they could use the same wood grommets for the wood drums, or for the metal drums as they use for the woods. But that'll help you date your drum. If you see a metal drum, whether it's an acrolite, or SUPRAPHONIC, or super sensitive, with that feature, it's from 1972 or before, okay? I'm fairly certain 1972 and before. So, I'm like, wow, there's a classic example of a, 1970, 71 Supra. Boy, that's plated nicely. What's the serial number? 950. 950. The 900s in serial number Berg and Ludwig is 1971, by and large. The old Ludwig timetables you see, the serial number tables you see in these books and stuff that are still out online too, and I think even now on the Ludwig website still has this feature where they say the 900,000 series of serial numbers is from 1976. That's off by 5 years. 900,000s are 1971, okay? Anyway, now Bob's chrome over brass with the B under the butt plate is 850-ish, okay? So 1970-ish. This one, 950 XXX, whatever, puts it about 71. And I'm looking at it, my God, that sure looks brass. So, I'm looking at this drum, and it has the hallmarks of brass. It just kind of has that deeper, richer brass, kind of like the reflections look a little more 3D. Plus, there's very, very fine, in certain pitting. Okay, now people mistakenly think that chrome brass shells don't pit. They do. They can. They won't pit the same way as an aluminum shell one will. Okay, usually the brass ones will pit because there's some moisture happening. But the pitting will start out real small, pinprick and black, really a dark green. Okay, that's the copper oxidizing. This had that a little. Classic brass shell. And plus on the inside of the shell, the flanges, remember after 1961, 62, on the Super Ludwigs, the brass rolled and welded had a lip like this, the lip, the curl. Well, when they went to Ludloy, it kind of just went straight, like a 45-degree angle and just kind of sharp. Those looked a little soft, like a little bent a little bit. Now you'll see that sometimes on aluminum shell. Like sometimes I've seen that in acrolites and a couples, SUPRAPHONIC. Sometimes maybe get a different sort of variety of aluminum or whatever. So I'm thinking this thing is brass. So the first thing I think of is like, wow, here's the corroboration. You know what I mean? So this person selling this drum, it was like $425 opening bid and like a $520 buy it now. Now, even for these days, for a Ludloy 1971, in that nice-looking condition, $525 is a damn good price for that, or $520. So I debated buying it, but the fact of the matter is I just bought the new Sonics last month. I bought some other cymbal. I just don't really have the dough. And but what I did is I contacted the seller. I said, listen, because I'm honest. I sent an email. I said, listen, just so you know, some of the drums in that era were brass. You know, yours might be brass. I said, why don't you look and see if there's a B behind the butt plate? And I'm sitting there, I send the email off. And I'm like, you know what, I can't buy this from, but I thought of George. So I texted George, because George likes brass shell snare drums. It's not that I don't like them, I just prefer aluminum. You know what I mean? I like the sound of bronze snare drums. Remember, they're copper and tin. They just sound a little more throaty. A bronze snare drum to me sounds a little more aluminum-like slightly than a brass does. A brass is kind of woody, but honky, like metal woody kind of. Anyway, metal woody. So George has, you know, a 1960-61 chrome over brass Super Ludwig. So I'm like, well, George might like it, even for collectability's sake. I mean, you know, this price is really good, right? So again, I contacted the seller, and I said, you know, hey, see if there's a brass and a BM stamped in the shell under the butt plate, because it's worth some money if it is. I mean, it's just the way I roll. So George is like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, oh, really? Well, I'll check it out. And I send him the link. And meanwhile, I get a response back from the seller. He or she is like, well, you know, I have a couple chrome over brass Ludwig snares, you know, from the early 60s. And I don't think this one's brass. He said, I even have a 6.5 by 14. I said, well, and then he said, by the way, there is a B under the butt plate. But it was a little vague. Like, I mean, I've been collecting long enough. You know, sometimes, you know, I'm a little, I think, properly skeptical. I just wanted to make sure the guy or gal wasn't kind of blowing smoke up my ass. Like, you want it, buddy? Sure, there's a B under the butt plate. You know, to be honest, it just seemed to me if somebody who had some 5 by 14 and 6.5 by 14 knew enough about the old Super Ludwigs, and then just for me to tell them, is there a B under the butt plate, and for them to still think it's not brass, something just wasn't clicking there. You know what I'm saying? You think that person would know about the B stamp 5 by 14. Anyway, so I told George about it. George buys it now. Buys it. God love him. The seller had their chance. I did my best to inform them. George gets it. I thought it was going to come in 2 weeks. Came yesterday. George texts me, sends me a picture. He's like, it's beautiful. I'm like, George, send me a picture of the B behind the butt plate. Which I thought might be hard, because remember, the one behind the butt plate and Bob's was pretty hard to spot. Well, this one, believe it or not, on the butt plate, the one now that George has, was in a position where you could kind of just turn the drum and you could clearly see the B. So my point is this. 6.5 by 14 brass shell relatives of the 5 by 14 from, you know, 69, 70, 71 with the B above the round on toe control exist. It's been confirmed. Bob has one. Now George has one. Isn't that funny? Peisty Bob has one, and Bottom George has one. The only two I know. I mean, obviously there's more out there. That's my point. So what I'm saying is check your 6.5 by 14 SUPRAPHONICS blue and olive badge. See if there's a B behind the butt plate. There could be. Okay. Again, everybody and their brother has been, you know, buying and selling these, you know, these rare ones, the 5 by 14s with the B above the butt plate. They're not, I don't think they're necessarily that rare. I mean, they turn up on eBay all the time. I know growing up here at music stores, like some resale shops, before the internet ever came along, I'd seen at least 10 or 15 of them. Now, bear in mind, by the by, in the original 5 by 14 Supras, not every one you'll see of those 1970s that has a clip badge is brass, okay? Some are Ludwig. Remember, there was a time when they did the switch over from the Keystone badge to the blue and olive badge. Remember, where you drill that hole for the Keystone badge was lower toward the bead. The blue and olive badge requires the hole to be drilled higher. So undoubtedly, there were some shells that were drilled for the Keystone badge, but they got the blue and olive badge, so they had to clip off the bottom of the badge just to make the blue olive badge fit on. But I think Ludwig used that clip badge intentionally on the chrome over brass. Maybe not originally. Maybe the original chrome over brass they got was right at the time they did the switch over. But I've never not seen a SUPRAPHONIC or super sensitive that has the B at above the tone control that doesn't have the clip badge. So if anybody out there has a 5 by 14 chrome over brass SUPRAPHONIC with the B above the tone control from the 70s, but has the full badge with serial number, let me know. I've never seen one. Because also, too, remember I was talking about the spacer that they discontinued about 72? There's quite a few of the 5x14 with the B above the tone control that don't have the spacer on the grommet. It's after Ludwig in about 72 switched to using a grommet on the metal shell that doesn't require the spacer. You know, like a distinct type of grommet that most people use now, right? In fact, right now I just saw one, I think, on Reverb. It has the clip badge, has the B above the tone control, but it doesn't have the spacer. It looks like a 1973-74 grommet. So I think Ludwig made them for a while. Anyway, the 6.5x14s exist. If you can in this video, post. If anybody, because they're out there, let me know if anybody else has a 6.5x14 with a B behind the butt plate, okay? Remember, Bob's is 850-ish, serial number 850,000. Again, which you put in about 1970, in the year 1970-ish. George is 950, which you put at about 1971, okay? So I just wanted to make this video. George and I, or George, is going to make a video on his newly acquired brass one. And I do want to make a video, too. I wish I had one of them in this video, but I don't. But again, corroboration has come. They exist. Look at your Supras. This is big news for Ludwig collectors. I think maybe a lot of old school Ludwig dealers and collectors might know this, but a lot don't. There's a lot of people over the years I know that have collected a long time that I've mentioned this B behind, like when I said Bob had a 6.5x14 with the B behind the butt plate and it's brass. They kind of looked at me finally like, yeah, I'm serious. So we found a corroborative. Two exist, therefore it's a conspiracy, right? Thank you for watching. I'll get my old camera system back up soon. More videos on the way. Please subscribe. See that purple button, magenta, whatever color it is. Hit that and you'll subscribe if you're signed in if you want. Thank you again dearly to all my subscribers. I really appreciate you folks, seriously. Don't forget to check out Bonzology with George and PFOZ, People's Front of Zeppelin YouTube channel. Moxie says hello. She just ran off. She's here somewhere. Again, the glorious news. Again, ironically, I prefer an aluminum. To a brass, but anyway. Thank you for watching. I'm going to try and post some footage of me playing that show I just did the other day where I was playing like Freeway Jam and White Room by Cream. And so I just got to get that from a fella, Joe, that came in. God love him. He came in the drum show. He came in last year too. So I got to get that footage from Joe. Again, thank you for watching my videos. I'll try to get that footage up. More videos coming very shortly. Thank you for watching.